Hi, welcome, dear participants. Welcome to our first session of a series of webinars organized by ELIANT. And we hope that we can contribute in our time, which is so full of phenomena of disruption, polarization, and even readiness for war, that we can contribute to concepts, to ideas, by sharing experiences, what we can do to promote in Europe, but also, of course, beyond Europe, to a culture of peace, to a new understanding of the human being and its developmental potentials. My name is Michaela Glöckler. I'm the current president of the Alliance ELIANT, and I'm very happy to introduce today Rolf Heine as our main speaker. He is a nurse and highly experienced in nursing education, but also over many, many years in all fields of practice. And he is the current president of the International Nurses Association. And in this function, he represents within the anthroposophic medical movement the field of nursing. So welcome, Rolf. And I would be very glad if you could maybe start what you want to share with us with the reason why did you choose for your professional life, which is now more than 30 years, the field of nursing. As a man, you know, it's more a women's profession, but you choose it as a man.
Yes, thank you very much, Michaela, for this question. Yes, indeed. When I was young, and it's about 40 years ago now, when I was about to make the decision, what should I become as a profession? And I never thought about going into the medical field. I never thought about it. I only had bad experiences with white-coated doctors. So it was really a thing that I did not know what to do. I was interested in biology and German language, and I studied that. But then I was asked to join the military service, or instead of that, a civil service. And I chose the civil service, and I was sent, and I also was looking for a home for the elderly. And there in 1.5 years, I really found the first time in my life to do something really meaningful, not only something for myself and for what a child or an adolescent wants to have from life, but I felt that it is really needed and that I could really unfold a lot of potentials in caring for people from in advanced age with a lot of diseases. And I felt that it was much more effective to care for them in their daily lives by helping them in their daily body care, in walking, in talking, and what life means, than all the colored pills they took for this or that and or against this or that. And then after that civil service, I decided to study nursing, and then I found an anthroposophic nursing college at the Filter Clinic, and I did my training there. And since that time, I'm very much connected with anthroposophic nursing, this very special mood of and attitude of nursing, and also a lot of skills that can be learned in a more holistic understanding of caring and nursing in that school, in that college.
Can you describe a little bit more what are the added values when you compare the mainstream system of nurses education with this anthroposophic nursing education you witnessed at the Filter Clinic Hospital?
Yes. It very much depends on how we look on the human being, and to look on the human being not only as a person that has a disease and is in a special challenge of his life, but to understand what life is. You know, when I studied biology, I asked the professor, "Can you tell me what life is?" And he said, "No, we can't. Science can't say anything about what life is." And so I found really a new concept of what life is and how to study life in human beings. And life is expressed in human beings in a very special way. And I learned about the role of warmth, the role of touch, the role of also a lot of external applications to treat people in a holistic way, in that anthroposophic way of nursing. And that is very different from modern nursing. In modern nursing, we are in many cases only just working on the protocols of what the hospital and the disease demands.
But can you share a bit more? What would be then the role of nurses in the hospital if they are qualified in that holistic way and really know all the needs of the patient?
Yes, for me, one very important concept is for nurses, and I think not only for nurses, it should be or could be a concept for an added concept, let's say, an added concept to whole medicine, not only to understand the disease, but what it means to be ill. And that disease and being ill is a possibility of being a human. Mm-hmm. It is not just something to get rid of, but to live with. And that was my very first experience in the home for the elderly, because age and death is not a disease. It needs care. And in many, many cases, especially chronic diseases, it's not only, some of them cannot be healed in a conventional understanding of just getting rid of them, but it is to find a way to live with a disease, with a handicap, with a disability. And nursing helps to integrate the disease into our life. And sometimes this integration means health in the conventional understanding of what health is.
That's interesting. In regard our times with all these disruptions, polarities, there is such an amount of hatred and readiness to make war. You know, from my point of view, this is not healthy. This is a collective disorder we have. And why you say elderly people have to live with their weak points, you know, no one has nothing to complain if he or she is beyond their 80s, yeah, then it's really normal that you have this or that problem. And it depends, you know, how well you can really integrate these problems into your daily life to reach, even in old ages, a high life quality. But when I consider all the problems the young people have today, how many need psychiatric or psychological support, how many are suicidal and think, what is my role on this planet? Yeah, I cannot find a good perspective for my life. So I must say this collective disorder we also have to integrate in our lives and find ways to transform that, to wake up, to, yeah, or how would you say we can integrate these problems in a constructive way, that it draws us not down, but that it stimulates our desire to work for a change, for an overcoming these negative tendencies? And what role do you think can we give the field of care? What can we learn from your subject in order to develop another attitude? You know, a human life without problem is not thinkable. We all have more or less private or social or whatever problems. So when we look in the wider world, we see so many problems. And when we have empathy, these problems are also our problems. Yeah. So I would say we really are in a crisis. We live not in healthy circumstances. And what would be your advice when one would listen to you? You know, what would you share to those who lead today our society?
Yes. I think I just take the perspective from the medical field, from a hospital, for example. And as you said, in a hospital, we have a lot, our language is a military language. We always fight against something. We fight against bacteria, we fight against viruses, we fight against this or that disease. And disease seems to be an enemy. And even the perspective of a patient normally is this disease is an enemy. And what I learned from many cancer patients is from that moment when they said, the cancer is not something that is beyond me. It has something to do with me. And I use this disease to go through an individual development. Since that moment, everything changed. They got a lot of power. They got a lot of enthusiasm to find a new way in their lives. And so this is my main experience. Maybe it's too much to say to welcome a disease. But we know that if we do not want to avoid it, but to accept it, it is there. There is a conflict. Even there is a social conflict. We should not avoid that conflict, but open up for the existence, for the reality of this conflict, to accept it as a reality. And I think this is the beginning of peace, like accepting a disease as something that happens with me and for me, maybe. And even social conflicts arise in that mood. We should not avoid them, but we should look into the eyes into the core of the conflict. And in many cases of social conflicts, we meet, let's say, a polarity of interests. Maybe the other wants something that I do not understand. In most cases, I do not really understand what the other means and wants and intends. And therefore, I feel in opposition against it. But whenever I understand what the intention of the other is, I start to transform also my own needs in addressing my own needs to the other.
Oh, that's interesting. That reminds me to this wonderful wisdom of Confucius. He says, we humans have 3 ways to learn. And all what you say is, so far as I have understood right now, that you say in this accepting, for example, a cancer disorder, because I got it, so it is definitely part of my organism. How can I come into a dialogue constructively with this disorder, and what can I learn from this experience, and that this more positive, accepting and transforming attitude is part of this holistic healing. Of course, we take cancer remedies. You know, I am also mainstream trained doctor on the field of pediatric, and I love our medical possibilities, although there are antibiotics and anti-drugs, you know. But it's only one aspect that we, of course, have to recognize that is not healthy. And there I'm against. But then, nevertheless, it is part of me. And then this holistic view and this developmental oriented view gives me total other perspectives. But Confucius says there are 3 ways of learning and of developing. 1, by imitation, by just having a model to learn from. A second one, out of painful experience, really to try to understand the reasons of pain and then try to avoid such reasons, really to learn from it. But the third, he says, and that is very interesting, he said, the third way of learning is out of insight, out of a real understanding what human development really is. Because then you can prevent disorders because you understand the laws of development. Do you think this plays also a role in your field of nursing, just to have a real concept of possible tensions, problems, and how to prevent? Yeah, I know you have studied a lot the phenomena and the concept of resonance. I think this third, more preventive-oriented developmental perspective has to do a lot with resonance. Does this play a role in your field of work? How do you work with this concept of resonance?
Yes, thank you very much, Michaela. I just want to add something to Lao Tse and Confucius about this concept of learning. There's a fourth possibility to learn, and that is learning by love. And it is a bit different from learning from a model. It is the atmosphere in which one can learn, even learning by insight, in an atmosphere of trust, in an atmosphere of confidence, in an atmosphere where you are regarded in your inner development as a development by suffering or a development by insight. And I think to get a feeling that learning is something that can really grow, and inner development can grow in an atmosphere of love. That is something that could be in the field of caring, to enable those learning moments.
Mm-hmm.
And this has something to do with the concept of resonance, which is now formulated by Hartmut Rosa and Thomas Fuchs and others. And this concept, it has really something to do with it, because we learn, or the first thing is that we feel something is approaching us, something is demanding us, and a disease, or even something beautiful. If we meet something beautiful, or a disease, or a life threat that calls us, we hear that call, this is the first moment of coming into resonance to hear the call of something. And that is in terms of what we talked before, that is accepting the disease as it is. If you just reject it, if you want to get rid of it, we cannot listen to what does the disease ask me for. And the second step of coming into resonance is that we feel we have an inner ability to cope with it. We have an answer to that demand. Maybe we have not the solution for the problem, but we feel the interest that we can engage in something. That is the most important concept in anthroposophic medicine and nursing, that we help our patients to find something to have a possibility to feel active in a process that used to be a passive one, being ill, being patient, not only to be patient, but to feel I can do something. My body can do something. In my body, in my soul, in my spirit, there are forces to help. That means I come into resonance not only by the demand of the disease, of the conflict, but I feel myself strong enough to find an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And
thank you very much, Rolf. Our conversation time is already over, and maybe we can continue if there are no questions from our audience. But we have quite a wonderful group of listeners, and I would be very interested if they have questions to us. And if yes, then we respond to them. And if no, then you can round up your concept of resonance.
Right.
So thank you very much.
We have no concrete questions at the moment.
Yeah, then we can continue and have a little more time. So far as I have understood you, also with this concept of resonance, it is finally all about development. Because if we don't accept something, then we remain as we are. We don't change, we don't transform. We just want to repeat how we are. Yeah, and when we are honest, crisis, illness, problems are huge calls to wake up and to learn more, to change, to transform. How do you see that? Maybe you can round up a bit your concept of resonance, how you see it in nursing, and also for humanizing our actual medical system.
You mentioned the third concept of this of resonance, and that is transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Interaction between the demand from the disease, from what we observe, and our inner answer. This starts a process of transformation. Coming into a dialogue changes us. Our dialogue will change us. And so that is most important to start in any conflict conversation. Because without conversation, everybody remains in its position. And this is so much needed also in these times of wars, where we meet wars everywhere, that the human ability to communicate is a cradle of peace. That is a moment, a possibility any human being has, that we are able to communicate, that we can come into a conversation, and we can come to compromises. To find a compromise that is not only the middle in between two opposing polarities, but it is to find the good for both of us. And this ability to find compromises is also crucial for solving conflicts. And the third is to care for the other and to care for the common house. We live in only one world. We live in that continent Europe with this special culture. And it is our continent, it is our culture we can care for. We can invest a lot of love and developmenting powers into that. Yes, and the fourth aspect of this concept of resonance is that we cannot expect it. We cannot make it. There is something that we have to look for, the moment, in English they call it the window of opportunity, to find the right time and the right people, maybe the right moment to start a conversation, to come into a rhythm, and to be open for it, to be open for the not foreseen. And this is all these four aspects: the demand, the inner answer, transformation, and the openness for the new things. That is what this concept of resonance could tell us, and it is very close to our human organization. It is a model of our human organization.
Now, when you shared this, I really had this beautiful holistic picture of the anthroposophic medical model in front of my eyes, because to see the problem, to accept the problem which confronts you, that is the physical aspect. You have a real confrontation with something. And then you have to integrate it in your life, to come into resonance. This is more the life organization aspect, yeah, how to integrate it. And then transformation, that is the level of soul where we have to overcome something within our souls. And then finally, this new insight, this new form of identity you reach, that is then this, what you name, compromise, that I can include in my own identity, even something which I hated before, because I understand its mission, its meaning, and its role, that it helped me to transform, so I cannot be against it anymore. So that's really very helpful, a wonderful idea. Thank you, Rolf. Maybe would you like to say something as a sort of farewell to our audience?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Michaela, for your question. That inspired me very much. And yes, and now it would be the question how to start that inner transformation process to become an individual that can carry, that can create peace. And that would be maybe a next conversation between you and another one. And yes, I think this is the very beginning of peace, to make ourselves ready for peace.
Yeah, and for me, this, what we shared, seems to me something like an eye-opener, that the contribution for peace, which could come from the field of care within medicine, could be to learn that what appears first as evil and problematic can, rightly understood, become definitely an inspirator for transformation, change, and development. And what I understood when I was young, not so good, when I read in the gospel, we shall love our enemies. Yeah. But now I understand more and more throughout my life that love starts with understanding, with accepting, with integrating, and finding the role even of disorders, that they have a role to play within the human development. And we will have, as more peace in the world, I'm sure, the more we have this desire to understand even those who think the opposite of us, and really try to understand why is this so, and then find a way to learn from one another and to find a common solution. Yeah, thank you. And thank you also for those who have listened to this. And we will continue with this attempt to give short contributions towards a culture of peace. Goodbye, and all the best for you.
Goodbye.